time, there was an old farmer, and this farmer lived on a beautiful farm with rolling hills and sweet green grasses. Oh, this farmer loved his farm. He also loved equally his 3 children. Now, this farmer was getting on in his years. He knew he was going to have to leave the farm to one of his children. He just didn't know which one. So, he decided to hold a contest. He called his 3 children to him, and he gave each of them a gold coin. And he told his children, whichever one of you can fill our farmhouse the most and for the longest, that will be the child that inherits the farm. And so, the oldest son set out with his gold coin, and he walked for some way until he came to a neighboring farm. And at that farm, the farmer was out scooping some hay. And the oldest son looked at that farmer scooping the hay, and he thought, well, gee, I could buy a lot of hay with this gold coin. And that's just what he did. He bought a couple bags full of hay, and then he walked back to his farmhouse and he threw it out onto the floor, and it covered the floor, and everyone was walking around on the hay. People were coming in and out of the house. And so by the end of the day, where it had been full of hay, now there was hay scattered out, and the house wasn't quite so full anymore. Now that second son, he took his gold coin, and he walked a little farther than his older brother had walked. He walked past another neighboring farm, and at that farm, the farmer was out with the chickens. And so, that second son, he looked at those chickens and he thought to himself, well, I could buy a lot of chicken feathers with this gold coin.
Feathers?
And so, he bought up a bunch of feathers, and he carried them on his back back to the farmhouse. And when he got to the farmhouse, he released those feathers into the air, and they settled down all over everything in the house, and the house was full of chicken feathers. Now the thing was, that farmhouse did not have air conditioning. And it was getting hot in there. And so somebody opened up the window. When they opened up the window, all of those feathers went back up into the air, and they swirled around, and they went out to the other window that had been open on the other side of the house. And now, the house was not quite so full of feathers. Now that third child, a daughter, she took her gold coin and she walked. And she walked and she walked. She walked all day long. And when she got to the town, the sun was starting to get low in the sky, and she walked down the main street. And she was looking in all the shops. She still wasn't quite sure what she was going to bring home to try to fill the house, when all of a sudden, she saw it in a shop window. So she went into the shop, she gave the shopkeeper her gold coin, and she walked out with a little brown bag. And as she began her walk back to the farmhouse, she called to all of her friends, "Come to my house, come on, come with me, come to my house, come to my house." And as she passed all of her neighboring farms, she knocked on all the doors, "Come to our house, come to our house, come on, follow me." And so, with a little brown bag that she had purchased in the store and a line of friends behind her, she walked back to her farmhouse just as the sun sank below the horizon. She called all of her friends into the house, and she gathered them in the living room. And right in the middle of the living room, she placed that brown bag, and she opened it up, and from the inside, she took out a candle. And she placed that candle right on the little coffee table that was right there, and she lit it. And there was suddenly light that filled the room. And the light, it went up to the ceiling, and it spilled out of the windows. And then the daughter, she said, "All right, friends, Now we're going to tell stories and we're going to sing songs all night long. And that's just what the circle of friends did all night long. They told stories and they sang songs and they laughed until their bellies hurt. And the sound of that laughter went right up to the rafters. And that sound too spilled out of the windows. It spilled out of the doors of the farmhouse so that the house itself couldn't even contain the joy that was felt there. And the father looked at his daughter and said, "You, my child, shall inherit this farm because you filled this house not just for tonight with joy and laughter and stories, but you filled it for a lifetime with these memories." The end.